Welcome to RealTalk Christian Podcast, where we drink coffee and have real conversations on faith, culture, and society. I'm your host, Chris Fuller, and on today's episode, I'm super excited to announce we have Andrew Myers back on the show today, and we're going to be talking about mental health in the church. I'm so looking forward to this conversation with Andrew, so stick around. Let's go. Welcome back to this week's episode of RealTalk Christian Podcast. I'm so excited to have you guys with us here this week, especially weeks of all week. This is the week that Andrew Myers has gladly come back on to our podcast and is going to be really talking about some pretty cool things, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I don't want to waste too much time by myself because I really want to get Andrew on here. So why don't we just go ahead and bring him on. Andrew Myers, welcome to the show again.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be back.
I'm so happy that you were like, hey, Fuller, you want to do another one? I'm like, yes, I do. Let's go.
Yeah, dude, I had a great time last time.
Oh, it was so much fun.
We should do this more often, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man, life has been so crazy since the last time we were podcasting together. You and I have been texting, but life's gone crazy. For you, you got a new job?
Yeah. No, I am no longer working at the phone company. I went full-time counseling.
That's so cool, man. Yeah. So you're starting this whole new chapter of life, counseling, and me, I've been just dealing with the whirlwind of different, cars breaking down here, engines blowing up here, the crazy things that the people in the Facebook community page probably have already heard me talk about several times. But yeah, it's been crazy, but I'm so happy. Thank you so much for coming back on to hang out with us tonight.
For sure. Yeah. I'm happy to be here, man.
So how's the family doing?
Yeah, great. Let's see. So, gosh, last time we checked in, I had a newborn, fresh one. So she's 5 months old now.
That's crazy.
She's doing great. She's chunky, which is what you hope for a 5-month-old.
Absolutely.
And, the kids are doing good. I got a 3-year-old and a just about 2-year-old as well. And they're awesome. The 2-year-old's fiery, man. She doesn't put up with no nonsense. So
that's awesome.
it's good, man. I've actually applied the counseling techniques to my 2-year-old, and it's worked well.
Perfect. I mean, listen, that's what family counseling is about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's learning the tips and tricks that you can use to conflict resolution with a 2-year-old.
Oh yeah. No, and the kids get it more than you think they do. They don't always articulate it super well, but then like you explain something to them, you're like, this went in one ear out the other for sure. And then they do it the next day and you're like, oh wow.
Yeah.
You were listening. Okay.
Well, they always say kids are like sponges. And one thing, so I've discovered, as I was sharing with you a little bit before we jumped on here, that since the beginning of the year, I've been doing some counseling myself, just from stuff from my past, and I mean a lot of things that I've shared with a lot of the listeners, and just kind of going, you know what? There's some things I could handle things better in my life, in my marriage, and I need to learn these tips and tricks and these tools, and I'm gonna go do it for myself, and it's so true. Like when you're a child, what happens in your family, it kind of programs you for life and how you respond to things. So, like you said, you're dealing with a lot of these counseling techniques with your 2-year-old. I'm trying to not jump into the episode right away here,
for sure.
But it's so cool that you are being able to use those skill sets that you've learned through your studies and making it so your family's going to have a healthier life in the long run because of it. So awesome.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, not to get ahead of ourselves, which we probably will.
Well, absolutely.
But, I find like a lot of times, like you have to teach your kid how to eat, how to talk, how to walk. And then at some point we just assume that they've got it. And we kind of like send them out into the world, whether it's to school or church or whatever, and we just kind of like almost stop training them, and we're just like, oh, they're just going to pick it up from how we are. And there's so many times like our kids don't like in adults, I see this in adults a lot. Like they don't have those skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have this way, like, oh, if I need a resolution right now, I need to solve this problem right now. They don't understand that somebody else might need 2 or 3 days to think about it.
Yeah.
And they may need a little bit of distance and time, and they don't hate you and they don't want to, like, you know, not be friends anymore, but they just process differently than you.
Right.
And so, like, being able to teach that to my kids, being able to learn that for myself and like how I interact with my wife, how I interact with friends, it just is so helpful. It's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I know we're going to be like, this is, we're broaching the topic already. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just hurry up and let's get the housekeeping stuff out of the way, because I really want to jump into it. I'm excited about it. I know you are too. So what are you drinking tonight there, Andrew?
Yeah, dude, not good coffee.
not good.
Office coffee.
Oh, okay. Folgers type.
Yeah, I think it's Dunkin' Donuts, but it's nasty.
You know what?
Dude.
And in all fairness, all right, if you got to drink an office coffee, Dunkin' Donuts is probably the one to drink. In all fairness.
For
so
sure.
I'm not even drinking coffee, so you're better off than me. I'm drinking, it's a hot spiced cinnamon tea. And let me tell you, I added too much tea to it, and it is extra spicy. It's like drinking Big Red. That's what it tastes like, right? It's like, whoa, punch in the face. But you know, it's a little bit later here for me. You know, you're on the West Coast. I'm like Midwest, so there's a few hour difference. But like I was sharing with you, I got to sleep at some point tonight. So I figured I'd stick with the tea, and then I got my backup, my water. You know, God's hydration molecules. So. So yeah, that's what we're drinking tonight. I'm going to read this review real fast, Andrew, and then we are going to dive into this topic head first. I'm looking forward to it. So this review comes from Lizzie_94. It says, wholesome 5 stars. I enjoy my car rides listening to RTC. My husband introduced me to this podcast and it just stuck. And we both listen together and separate. Great to have a Christian family friendly podcast to listen to in the car. Well, Lizzie, we appreciate the review. And if you haven't reached out to us already for your free mini swag bag, please do send us your name and your address, and we'll get one sent to you right away. Also, if anybody's listening out there and you need a Bible, I still have Bibles. We will always keep Bibles in stock here at the podcast studio. If you need one, send us your name and your address, and I will send you one out for free. We want to get the Word of God in your hands as quickly as possible. So, with all the housekeeping out of the way, let's dive into today's topic that many believers, I think, actually do deal with, but often don't talk about openly in church. And that's the topic of mental health. I know for a long time in Christian circles, struggles like anxiety, depression, burnout, and emotional exhaustion have sometimes been misunderstood, minimized, or even stigmatized. But the truth is, many faithful Christians quietly battle these things every single day. So today, what I wanted to do is have an honest and biblical conversation with my friend Andrew Myers here about what and why mental health matters in the church, where God is in the middle of those struggles, and how the church can be a place of healing instead of silence. So to start off, you know, Andrew, where do you start except for at the beginning? In the beginning, my first question to you is, when we hear the phrase mental health, what are we actually really talking about?
It's a great question. I actually have thought about this kind of a lot. The best way I can describe it is in analogy. And so, like, what do we mean by physical health? What do we mean when we're saying, oh, somebody's physically healthy? And that can look really different for each person. Yeah. And so somebody can be, are they working out? Are they eating the right foods? Are they on the right medications that they might need? How are they handling, a whole broad spectrum of things? And mental health is the same thing. Like, you don't have to be an athlete to be physically healthy, and you don't have to be just the most well-adjusted, the most, securely attached person to be mentally healthy. So I guess for me, mental health would be the totality of the inner life would probably be the shortest answer I could give. And it would be, to some degree, you have to understand where a lot of this comes from, and maybe to your end, why it's stigmatized, or why people in church don't talk about it, is we do have to go back to Freud, right? And so that would be psychology, or the study of the soul. And that really was a secular approach to things, and religiosity or religious belief was a mental illness in Freud's mind, and even some of his disciples would also say the same thing, that if you had faith of any kind, it was a mental illness. And so that's like been categorically proven false, even through a lot of secular studies, including faith in the counseling room is super effective. It's so helpful. But yeah, mental health as an idea would be, the study of the soul, or the study of the mind. And yeah, it can look very different for a whole number of different people, depending on your background, your biology, your upbringing, even like your physical will interact with the mental, and your spiritual will interact with the mental as well.
Yeah. So, as we think about this, as we try to understand how the mental and the spiritual and even the physical interact with each other, and that kind of makes us who we are, and whether we're in a healthy spot or not for us, as you said, it's very individualized. Something that may bother somebody may not necessarily bother somebody else.
Sure.
The one thing I like to think about is sugar, right? From a physical standpoint, sugar would drastically affect a diabetic, but not somebody who is not diabetic. Totally. So this is the same thing in my mind, and it sounds like yours as well, of mental health. How, there's some commonalities that affect people, things like anxiety, depression, burnout, loneliness. Those things I think affect pretty much. If you're experiencing those are very common things that can happen to people. So what are some of the other most common, maybe mental struggles that you see people facing today, whether in the church, outside of the church? What are some things that other than like the typical anxiety, burnout, depression, that you see that people actually do still experience?
Yeah, so that you nailed it. I think that anxiety and depression are probably the two major categories that people will come into my office or into other people's offices for. Yeah. But I think those are downstream issues primarily, and I don't want to be insensitive to that at all. But yeah, like. To give examples of that is like, probably most people will go to seek out counseling for anxiety or depression. That's like number one on the list. Yep. But when you start to, and that's kind of the beauty of therapy, is that we do get a longer period of time to talk to people. We get a longer period of time to flesh some of these things out. And you'll talk to somebody and they don't know why they're sad. They just are sad. Yeah. They don't know what's going on in their life that's making them feel that way. But then you start to flesh out, okay, well, how did we get here? How did we approach this? And you find out, oh, well, there's trauma in their past that is extensive. And you find out that, like, I don't want to give it any examples. You may find out that somebody there's trauma, there's abandonment issues, and then maybe they're in the wrong workplace. They've got a terrible boss who makes their life awful, 10, 12 hours a day. And then they go home and they have huge, horrible fights with their spouse for an extended period of time. And we talk about all of those things, and then the depression starts to make a little bit more sense. Yeah. And then, even working through all that, then you find out, oh, they use nicotine in excess. They drink 8 energy drinks a day. That'll cause some anxiety. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay. So like, that's not really a panic attack, brother. Like that's
over
we need to look at
caffeination.
your diet a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I would say those are probably the two main categories, but they're really downstream issues. They're not the cause. They're just the symptoms that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
But then there, like, I think a lot of people have unresolved trauma that they've been through, and they don't want to talk about it because I'm stronger than that, or I've moved past it. It's been such a long time. But a lot of people, I talk with people often, is like, you got a vessel and you crack the lid and you shove the nasty crap down in the vessel, and then you lid it. And then you open it up, you shove some more down in there, and you shut the lid. And then eventually, it's so toxic and so bad, you've never cracked the lid on it. And so you end up with cracks in your vessel.
Yeah.
And your wife starts catching strays, and your children catch strays, and you're blowing up your life at work, and you're blowing up all these things because either you've never cracked the lid and let some people in, or you've just never dealt with that stuff that's happened to you over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with everything you said. Even in my own personal life, I know a lot of the stigmas that were surrounding me in my early adulthood was, well, if you go seek out counseling, it's you're weak, or you're this, or you're that. And I often equate it now to when I talk about people, similar to what you say, you talk about the jar. I say it's like every problem that you have, you're taking that emotion that you should be letting out and working through, and you're putting it in a mason jar and you're stuffing it in the pantry. Well, then eventually your pantry is going to be overfilled with all these mason jars, and you're going to open the door to go put another jar in, and jars are going to start falling out. It's overfilled, and that's when it becomes too much. And that's when, again, you start probably seeing people in your office because they're depressed, because those emotions that they don't know why they're falling out. They can't understand it because they haven't unpacked these past traumas or past things that have happened, or even sometimes just certain ways people's brains process things. Maybe it's not a trauma. Maybe it's just the way that God created their mind, and maybe they need to be on certain medications or stuff like that because of other things. And so I think everything that you were saying is so on the head of the nail, man. You're just, it's like so on point of what you're saying. And it's a lot of the reasons why I think there is a lot of I would say more mental health awareness today than maybe there was 30 years ago, because for 30 years we've been stuffing that jar. Like you were saying, 30 years people are said, listen, if you go to counseling, why would you? I remember I was in a charismatic church, and I heard, well, seeking counseling is seeking wisdom from the world, and that leads to sin. And it's like, wait a second, you go back and think about that now. It's like, no, I don't think so.
I've heard that so many times, and I think I told you too. I went to a Pentecostal church for a long time,
right?
And I can't tell you the damage that does.
Yes.
Where it's like, if you had enough faith, your children would be well-adjusted, good, holy Christians. If you have enough faith, you won't get sick. If you have enough faith, you won't be, anxious or depressed. And brother, it's just not the case.
Yeah.
It's just not real.
So leading into that a little bit and thinking about faith, right? And we talked about a little bit, you brushed on how faith really does play an important role in therapy, I would say. When Christians are out there and they go, well, I'm plugged into the church, I go to this Bible study, I go to this small group, I go to this Sunday school. Does that make them immune from the struggles, or do they experience these types of things just as much as everybody else does?
Oh, I would say, absolutely. They experience it. I don't know if as much as everyone else does.
Yeah.
That's like one thing that I think I'm still wrestling through to some degree.
Yeah.
Because absolutely, I'm not a deist, right? And I don't believe that God created the world and took his hands off and it's just a clock that's winding down.
Right.
I don't believe that. I believe God's at work, that he can heal and change and save. And, I've met people that just were off the rails and they got saved, and God completely, healed them of like things that just don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
and so I know that like there is healing and there is beauty and benefit in what God can do, but like you don't have to look far in the Bible to see where God allowed people to be sad, allowed people to lament. There's a book on that called Lamentations.
Yep.
There's you can go to First Kings and see the story of Elijah. And that's actually a fascinating story too about mental illness and mental health. This is a man who's a prophet of God. He's filled with the Spirit of God. And he is in a rough way. He's depressed. He's fatigued. He's struggling. And God recommends a snack and a nap. It's like, bro, you need a good food. You need some good food, and you need to take a little rest.
You're hangry. It's okay.
Yeah. Like, bro, this is tough. And God understands, and it didn't make the prophets. It didn't make Paul, right? Because Paul prayed multiple times to be healed, and he wasn't healed. Some of the friends of Paul, got sick or passed away.
Yeah.
And so the Christians are not immune to a fallen world. We exist in a fallen world. We have flesh that's passing away, and that's not just physical. That we're going to be, in a fallen state. It's also mental and it's also spiritual, that we're going to be struggling until we reach glory,
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it would surprise a lot of people to realize just how many believers actually quietly carry a lot of these struggles. And unfortunately, the church hasn't always handled, like we talked about, hasn't handled this topic well. And there's been a lot of misconceptions, especially like you and I had just mentioned, coming out of the Pentecostal church. There's just a lot of misconceptions that happen. So why do you think mental health has historically been such a difficult subject for the church to actually talk about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it goes to what I was first saying there, is that it really does have secular roots.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's wise to ignore that.
Yeah,
that there are really legitimate secular roots there that were anti-theist. They were against God and against anybody who had a faith in God. And so, like churches in the 70s trying to deal with mental health issues, and their only option is like Freud or secular psychology. Yeah, it probably wasn't a good idea to be sending people to psychologists at that point.
Yeah.
It would be unhelpful as a whole. But where we're at now, and actually a lot of the work that the university that I go to, CCU, has done, and the work that a lot of very solid Christians have done to allow for faith to inform your clinical identity has gone a long ways. And so some of that stigma, I think, is legitimate and was the best effort of the church at that point.
Yeah.
But now there are so many options of good, solid Christians who are theologically robust, that are sharing the best modalities or the best clinical practices that they have, along with a rootedness in Scripture that is able to transform people and is able to improve people's lives in really meaningful ways. So yeah, I think, to answer your question, I think there was a reason why people wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And maybe even now, I don't know that I would recommend somebody go see just any counselor.
Absolutely.
Right? If somebody's going to come speak into your life and give you advice, it would be unwise to see somebody who's going to affirm your sin, who's going to affirm your chaos and your suffering and your pain, say, oh, it's everybody else's fault. It's not your own fault. There's nothing you've done wrong. Everybody else is evil. You're the best. You're and give you that kind of affirmation. It's unhelpful and it's untrue.
Yes.
But there are a lot of counselors out there that can give you great advice and give you, I guess, similar to you could go see a doctor. And maybe you see a doctor because you've got GERD or really bad heartburn.
Sure.
And one doctor is going to say, oh, go on omeprazole. And you're going to be on omeprazole for the rest of your life. Don't change anything about what you're doing. Just take omeprazole. You'll be fine. And then you might see another doctor who'd be like, hey bro,
quit eating pizza every night.
Yeah. Like what's your diet look like?
Right.
And you're like, oh, it's, I go to McDonald's, 8 times a day.
Right.
And I'm eating 3,000 to 5,000 calories of McDonald's every single day. I don't want to, speak to the medical field too much, but one doctor is probably going to recommend you change your diet. Yep. And one doctor is going to give you a pill and say, don't change anything about you, just take this pill.
Right.
And I think the same thing can be true in the psychological world, where being challenged, and receiving counsel, right? Like not just positive affirmation, but receiving counsel that, hey, there are better ways to do things. There's better ways to think. There's better ways to interact with people. You don't have to continue down the path that you're on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you 1,000%. I think that there's good counseling and bad counseling that can happen, right? Right. And the thing that I would want people to know is that just in case you have a bad counseling experience, don't judge every person that does counseling based upon that bad counselor. You know what I mean? 100%. Because again, exactly what you're saying. It's like one doctor would say, hey, take this pill. And another doctor say, no, change your diet. One's going to treat the symptoms. One's going to treat the problem. The problem is, hey, we got to self-reflect here a little bit. And and it might hurt and it might be painful and you may not like it all the way, but it's for your benefit. And that's good, godly wisdom and counsel right there. So, there's just trying to stick with a lot of this thought process behind why it's so hard to talk about these things in the church. I feel like maybe you have some more insight of maybe some misconceptions in the church that Christians have about mental health and about therapy. And, you've been working in the field. You may have heard things. I know that, I expressed to my counselor some of the things that you and I already talked about a little bit, like Christians shouldn't feel depressed. We should find our happiness and joy in God at all times. If you prayed more, you'll be fine. And faith should always eliminate any type of anxiety. Cast your cares upon him because he cares for you, those types of things. What are some other misconceptions maybe that you've heard Christians say?
Yeah, I mean, those are up there for sure. And then I think that there's a real misconception about really how to interact with people and the people in the church. I think what's not talked about enough is that there really is a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. There's a difference between turning the other cheek and being a doormat. And I would even, this might be a little spicy, but I'd touch on the poverty gospel as well, where, I don't at all want to adhere to the prosperity gospel and say,
but there's the other extreme.
Yeah. Right. So I don't want to say oh, if you just have enough faith, you're going to be wealthy, your children are going to be well adjusted, all these things. Right. But I also don't want to be well,
if you are wealthy, you're a sinner.
Yeah. Or I should be sad. I should be broken. I should be instead of being humility, I should have humiliation in my life. Absolutely. And there's this, if I'm serving the Lord, there's, I should be broke and distraught. And, even the idea of good and godly pride, and feeling man, I accomplished something obviously through the gifting and grace that God has given me, but feeling true humility is rightly placing yourself where you should be. Right. And so it's not thinking too little of yourself or thinking too much of yourself. And I've met so many people that it's they cannot feel good about anything they've ever done. And they can't feel even the slightest inkling of, and I know pride, right? It's depending on how, that's the problem with the English language, right? We have one word for love. So I love hot dogs and I love my wife.
Right.
What is it the same thing? It's not the same thing.
No, it is not.
And then I think the same thing with pride. Like we say pride, like, oh, it's arrogance.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, like you can feel accomplished. You can feel good. You can leave an inheritance of faith and of like accomplishment for your children.
Yep.
And so I see a lot of people that just beat themselves up and think that, oh, I'm turning the other cheek on this person who has abused me for 15, 20 years. I'm being the bigger person. And it's like, well, you can stand up for yourself. You can have healthy boundaries.
Yes.
And forgiveness is truly a one-way street, but reconciliation is a two-way street.
Yep.
And so somebody who's just awful to you, awful to your family, awful to your children, like you don't have to be in a close, intimate, personal relationship with them in order to glorify God. You can set boundaries that are safe for you and safe for your family. And you can work towards reconciliation. I believe God wants you to work towards reconciliation, but it doesn't mean that you have to like go, wait for like you go hug somebody that's just stabbing you in the back every single time you hug them.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that I think maybe a misconception or issue is that Christians have to be a doormat and they have to feel terrible all the time. You really don't. You don't have to feel terrible all the time.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody that like, okay, they're going through something, right? They're a doormat right now. Somebody's stabbing them in the back and they're like, oh, Brother Andrew, I understand that Brother Fuller is stabbing you in the back. You know what? You just need to pray more. How deeply does that affect people? Like if I said that to you, if I said that you just need, how does that struggle that person, I mean, how much harm can that do to somebody?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. I think it's kicking somebody when they're down, you know. It's not so like prayer is important.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I guess I'll do a little self-disclosure here. Like I have dealt with pretty severe depression for most of my life. That's pre and post Christianity or conversion.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I know when, especially grandmas, I don't know what it is about grandmas praying, but like God's got a special place in his heart for grandmas that pray.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's like amount of time or whatever it is, but like he hears their prayers in a special way. It is what it is. Right.
Yep.
But I know when people are praying for me and I can feel some of that fog lift and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But also, like, to a certain degree, I would hold to this like axiom that grief demands a witness, and so there is this level of like being able to tell somebody, have them hear that, and not like judge you and beat you up for it, but just like say, man, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Is there anything I can do? Can I pray for you? Could you need some food? Like, what can I do to help? And so, like I'll tell you this story from when I was a youth pastor, which, jacked my life up. And I think it led me towards this trajectory is, I had a woman come into my office who just broken. She'd been going to a different church and, she was dying of cancer and she had, really, really bad cancer that's not going to be cured. And her pastor told her that if she had enough faith and if she was really a Christian, she would not have cancer. God would heal her.
Oh no.
And it broke my heart, man. And I just sat and like wept with this lady, and then confirmed for her, like, we went through the Bible and talked about like, okay, believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father, unless what? Unless what, right? And then you shall be saved, unless what? And it's like, unless you have cancer, like, absolutely not. Nope. Unless you're depressed, absolutely not. Unless you sin, absolutely not. Like, your salvation rests in the hands of God entirely and wholly, and your ailments, your suffering, your pain is not an indicator that God is not pleased with you, or that you've somehow walked out of his grasp.
Right.
He has you entirely and wholly. It's his work from beginning to end. And so in the counseling realm, we approach it somewhat differently than that, but it's not pray the depression away,
right.
Pray the anxiety away. If you just had enough faith, you're kicking somebody when they're down.
Yeah.
And to some degree, people need to get it out. They need to be able to have somebody witness that and sit with them in it and hear it, whether it's anxiety, depression, or otherwise. And to some degree, they also need to be reminded of things that are true. And that's where things like cognitive behavioral therapy, attachment theory, and mindfulness and grounding techniques can be really, really helpful to say, like, yeah, your first thought is, I'm unworthy, I'm unloved, I've been broken, I cannot be healed. And it's like, well, no, like the Bible says one thing here, which is take every thought captive unto the Lord Jesus.
Yep.
And then cognitive behavioral therapy takes that idea and fleshes it out for you that your first thought you probably won't be able to control.
Right.
But you can control your second thought.
Yep.
And you can say, hey, you might think I'm unworthy, but when you think that thought, now's a great time. A flag should go off in your head to say, I'm made in the image of God. I'm worthy of dignity, honor, value, and respect. My existence is not dependent on how I feel right now. And these people's affection for me is not dependent on how I feel right now.
Right.
And when you start thinking those things, then maybe your emotions come up. And if you just did the first thought, you're going to be depressed and broken and sad. And you're probably not going to go, then you're not going to go talk to those people, and you're going to spiral into this. I'm unworthy. I'm unhealthy. I'm unloved. And people will self-medicate, or they'll self-harm, or they'll, a lot of really terrible things happen. But by replacing that first thought and taking a moment and being present, being mindful, you can then maybe go walk up to that friend group. Or if you can't do that, you can sit next to the person who's sitting next to you and talk to them and make a new friend. Right. And find out, man, I can spiral upwards. I can have a whole new friend group because that other friend group is horrible. And they're not good friends. Yep. That's okay too. Yep. And
absolutely.
No,
everything you said is great. And it's funny because it's in those moments for ourselves, we should try to, exactly what you said. Maybe we can't take captive the first thought, the second thought of saying, no, I got to remember the promises of God. And also when somebody else comes to us, we don't just go, well, you got to pray that away, brother. Or I'm just praying for you, and don't pray with them. Be there. I think of the story of Job, right? Job's friends did the right thing in the beginning, right? They sat with Job in silence. They sat with him. They were there for him. God didn't get upset with his friends until they started going, well, maybe you sinned. Well, maybe you did this. Maybe you did that. Maybe you should just do this. And it's like, it's about being there for people. And I think because we're not, maybe that could also kind of help. I think well, I'll get into that in a second. But I think with all this going on and maybe some of these stigmas that are happening, do you think this is maybe one of the main reasons why Christians hide their struggles maybe in the church because they want to, John Doe or John Smith, and they said, hey, I got this, I'm feeling real down today. And instead of being like, brother, hey, what's going on? Let me be here for you. Let's talk about it. You know what? Let's go get a coffee. I'm going to clear my day for you. Let's just be. I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to pray with you. Try to remind them of the promises of God and stuff like that. But rather than met with that, they're met with, I'll just pray for you, brother. So is that maybe why they hide their struggles? And instead of like, I know this happens all the time, even with me. Hey, Chris, how you doing today? You see each other at church and you're like, good. You have a good week? Yep. And that's about the extent of it, right? Yeah. Do you think that that's because of the responses that the church has given and kind of this misuse of you got to pray it away, or I'm praying for you, but not actually praying with?
Yeah, I think it's deeper than that as well. So that is almost better than what like I personally have experienced, and what I know a lot of people experience is that when the first sign of openness is shown, like vulnerability is shown, then you get attacked. And like, so say, this is hypothetical, not happened to me, but say you're serving in like youth ministry, you're watching kids or whatever, you're in the nursery, and you know, the kids are fine, everything's good, and your person next to you that's working with you is like, hey, how are you doing? And you have just this inkling of like, man, I'm having a rough week. It's been bad. I've been fighting with the wife. Work sucks. I'm struggling, all this stuff, right? And then next thing you know, you've got a meeting with the elder board or with your pastor about why you can't serve in ministry anymore. Or now friend groups stop talking to you. People start judging you and looking at you like, oh, he's a sinner. Like, I don't even know if he's really saved. And people, I've experienced it personally. I've heard about it significantly, that the first time you show a chink in the armor, then people just go after you.
They equate it with struggling with sin rather than just struggling with that, or a mental health issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And instead of being met with grace, mercy, and love, you're met with violence, you know? And I think, yeah, to some degree, you do get the kind of, I don't know. Yeah. Hey, brother, I'll pray for you. I'll be praying for you. And it is what it is. But I think why that comes up is that, especially for men, has been my experience, especially for men, is we're taught, you know, men don't cry, men don't show vulnerability, men don't open up, and it's rare. It's not appropriate to cry. I've got to handle my own problems, and so then if you ever do open up, which that's kind of a big step for a lot of guys, then it's met with hostility, or I wasn't ready for that. That's too much. And really what people need is a safe place to like open up and to share and to be prayed for, to be, you know, cared for. And a really helpful thing to do would be a follow-up text or a follow-up phone call too. So when somebody does finally open up, to say, you know, hey man, I've been praying for you this week. You want to go get a coffee? Right. I know it was a lot on Sunday. Is there anything you need? Do you want to hang out? You want to just, you know, go shoot some pool or whatever, right? Right. So, yeah. I think people just don't open up because they've been attacked, and they don't open up because they've been taught not to. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that kind of leads me into kind of the next train of thought that I want to get into a little bit, because, I mean, there's an important question I think that many Christians wrestle with, and as Christians we know we struggle spiritually, but there are also like emotionally and psychological struggles that people do have, right? And this is kind of what I think we feel like we get judged for, especially like what you were mentioning with like men aren't supposed to cry. Like I can't tell you how many times I heard that as a child. Like toughen up, you're a man. So how do we distinguish? You know, because you're going to have spiritual struggles, but you're also going to have these physical struggles too. And how do we distinguish between the two, between a spiritual struggle and a mental health struggle as Christians? Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of overlap there, and probably rightly so. There's a lot of overlap, but I think kind of what we were talking about before as well is that like, we're not just physical and we're not just spiritual. Right. It's a both and so like as a Christian, you can find healing and peace and fulfillment in Christ. And it doesn't take away from, you know, whether it was divorce or abuse or whatever thing that you've struggled with for however many years in your life. And so like, I can give my example here is that there'll be sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months where I'm just depressed. I just like everything there's not, I don't feel anything good. It's just all bad for a prolonged period of time. Right. And what is really helpful there. And whether it's like seeing a counselor, which I would recommend, or if it's just finding somebody that you really trust that is going to be able to walk with you through that can listen to you and can help you unpack the stuff that's going on in your heart. And it's not like one of my favorite preachers is Charles Spurgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And that dude struggled with a mixture of anxiety and depression till the day he died.
Right.
And one of the things that he talks about in some of his sermons, as well as like in his autobiography, is the blessing that his wife was to him. That she would take him on these trips to the ocean, and he felt the most peace that he had ever felt because. And he's like the Christian guy.
Right.
Like if you don't know Spurgeon, get to know Spurgeon. Spurgeon's amazing. Right. But his wife would sit and listen to him and let him vent and let him get it off of his chest. Yeah. And then he was in somewhere that was really peaceful to him, away from this high stress ministry that he had. And he would get peace, and then he'd be fulfilled and able to go back and do the work that changed the life of millions of people.
Right.
And so I think that's like worth noting, that if you are struggling with anxiety or depression, or if it's something more, something a little bit heavier than that, like borderline personality disorder or bipolar or schizophrenia or something like that, seeing a counselor, getting the right medication from a psychiatrist, maybe talking to a nutritionalist or a physical therapist or a personal trainer, like throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
Absolutely.
See what's helpful for you, because there's probably 5 or 6 or 8 elements that are affecting you. Mm-hmm. And by showing that vulnerability, it doesn't mean you're weak or unloved by God or unable to fulfill his purposes for you. It just means that you're taking steps to be the absolute best version of yourself you can be. And much like Spurgeon, taking that reprieve, and I would say as well, like with Jesus, right? He would withdraw often and go pray and have quiet time and be away from the crowds. Mm-hmm. And then he'd come back and do extremely meaningful ministry for a prolonged period of time. That can be true for you as well.
Yeah.
You can take that time to get healthy, to get well, and go back and do something that you weren't going to be able to do in the chaos of it without taking some time to decompress and take care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to lean into a little bit of kind of what you're saying here a little bit. You talked about Spurgeon and some of the struggles he had. You talked about Elijah in 1 Kings and the struggles that, the kind of the despair that he had. You mentioned, Paul in 2 Corinthians, that overwhelming pressure. We also think of like David in the Psalms and how he's crying out. He has a lot of lamenting in the Proverbs. And I guess my next question for you is, why is it important for Christians to understand that struggling emotionally does not mean someone lacks faith? Because we see these great giants in the scriptures and outside of the scriptures that have these mental struggles, mental health issues, maybe even physical health issues, but they still had great faith.
Yeah. I think to boil it down to a faith issue is to ignore so many aspects of reality, and to ignore even what the scripture says about these things, that you don't know what somebody else has been going through, and you don't and maybe I think this happened to me not long ago. I got my blood pressure checked, like, a normal guy.
Sure.
Like once a year I go to the doctor. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good. I have some new pain when I wake up, and I'm like, oh yeah, my knee hurts now. That's a
I'm getting old. I'm getting old.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just living with this. Oh, my back hurts. Yep, new feature unlocked. Yep. Right, I leveled up. Right, and I go to the doctors. And I've got I think it was 210 over 140 blood pressure, which the doctor's like, bro, you're about to stroke out.
Yeah,
and it was like, okay,
I got a problem here.
Thank you for that. And so I didn't want to get on medication right away. I went on plug for keto, y'all. I went on keto and it fixed my blood pressure in like 3 days.
Wow.
Lost a bunch of weight. You know, it's hard. I'll tell you all, it's the hardest thing. One of the hardest things I've ever done. It's brutal.
Yep.
But it fixed my blood pressure. And I remember like sitting there with my chicken and broccoli lunch, which I was having for like the 100th time.
Yep.
And it's gross, dude. It's disgusting. Especially the 100th time. You're done with it.
Yep.
And I was looking at one of my coworkers who he basically, you know, it's McDonald's in the morning, Del Taco for lunch every single day. He lives off of Dr. Pepper. It's, you know, just cannot stop drinking it.
Yep.
And then he goes and he's telling me about, oh yeah, every night I'm eating steak and potatoes and all this stuff. And I was so like jealous and bitter and frustrated with it. And then like, you know, God, as he does, he like whispers this tiny word. He's like, you don't know his life.
Right.
Like he's doing that, but maybe he's on, you know, warfarin, like blood thinners. He might be on hypertension medication. He could be on a whole slew of medication, and his life is not reflective of mine. So
Right.
I'm eating this way to fix my blood pressure, and I'm bitter that I don't get to eat Del Taco. But
I mean,
it's like
there's a little bitterness, understandable.
yeah, right. But it's like, well, I don't know what his life looks like.
Right.
I don't know what he's going through and what, you know, what medications he's on. And I'm thinking like, why does this guy get to live this healthy, happy, well-adjusted life? And I'm over here eating broccoli and chicken
For the 100th time.
100th time, just hating it. And and the same thing is true for mental health. Like, oh, I don't get it. Why are these people at church so happy and so fulfilled, and I just feel empty and lost and broken? Yeah. Or why are they able to go up and give this amazing sermon or give a testimony, and I can't get out of the back row of the church? Or I can't even make it to church. I have to watch live stream because my anxiety overwhelms me. And you think, oh, I'm lost, I'm broken, I'm unloved, I'm unhealthy. Yeah. And you don't know. Like the people sitting next to you in the pews or in the seats, they might be on they might be on mood stabilizers, they might be on Prozac or antidepressants or any number of other things, and they might be putting on a facade as well, and they might be walking through something you have no idea that they're walking through. Yep. And they just don't have an avenue or the tools to process that, and so it's wrong for us to think that what we're going through is not what other people are also going through in some other way, and we're able to, like, there are good steps, and going to see a counselor is a great option, or going to see your pastor. If you don't want to go see maybe there's no counselors you can trust in your area, having weekly regular meetings with the elders or the pastors of your church and just walking through some of this stuff is super important. And it's not a lack of faith or a lack of commitment to God. 'Cause maybe like, maybe you went through some horrible traumatic thing in your life and you've just blocked it out.
Right.
Maybe you've repressed a lot of things, and that's why you're sad, because your body keeps the score, and your body is not going to let you forget that one way or the other. And you may need to work through these things. You know, you may need to talk about these things, and you're not a failure of faith because you have high blood pressure. Right. You're not a failure of faith because your knee doesn't work quite right. Yep. And you're not a failure of faith because you're really sad and you don't know why, or because you're really anxious and you don't know why. Absolutely. There's a whole number of reasons why that might be happening to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would, jump on and tag on to the end of that and say, even if you don't have a good counselor in your area, or, I know that there's some listeners out there that maybe aren't plugged into a church. You can do virtual online counseling sessions now. So that's always an option too, if you're feeling that way. So I want to get in, because you talked about a little bit of people struggling with anxiety or depression. You don't know what's going on to the person next to you. But for those people that are, anxious and depressed and emotionally exhausted, one of the hardest things I think, at least from my experience when I'm in those moments, is feeling like God is distant. And so when someone feels like emotionally overwhelmed, where is God in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, probably the best answer is like God is not far from any of us. You know, He's with us in the suffering. I'm reminded of the that I don't know. It's on like all these walls in churches of the two sets of footprints. You know, and then it's just then one
footprints in the sand.
Like, what's that?
I think the poem is Footprints in the Sand.
Footprints in the sand. Yeah, there you go. But it's like, yeah, like you're walking and you're walking with Jesus and everything's great. And then when really hard times come and you feel so distanced from God and you look and you're like, there's only one set of footprints. And that's when God's carrying you.
Yep.
And he's in my case, and probably maybe a lot of people can resonate with this. There's not like two sets of footprints. It's like this body being dragged and,
right.
and maybe like flailing and kicking and screaming, you know?
Yep.
And so that's like he grabs your foot, you know, and it's like, no, we're going to the kingdom, bro. Yep. Like this is what's happening.
It's not by our power, it's by His power. So
absolutely. Right. And so, yeah, I would say, if God feels distant from you, there's a whole number of reasons. I would go, like, obviously, like I'm a Christian, I'd go to Scripture and say, the heart is deceitful and wicked and evil above all things. Who can know the depth of it?
Right.
The answer to that is God.
Yep.
Can know the depth of it, but we cannot.
Yep.
And so your relationship with God is not purely an emotive relationship. Mm-hmm. And if you feel sad or you feel distant, like your heart may be lying to you.
Yeah.
And that's where I really appreciate John Piper on this. That's another great man of faith who loves the Lord and preaches the gospel. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever watched him, I can't watch him actually, because he's like, and the Lord, I know, and Jesus,
he's so animated,
and he's just so emotive. And I'm like, bro, my ADHD is kicking in way too hard right now.
Especially when his hair is a little bit longer and it gets a little crazy when he's flailing around.
Yeah.
I love him though.
Lord,
yeah, I love him though. He's great.
Oh yeah. But he does a really great job of being honest about his depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And he's what he does is he puts it on, at least maybe he used to. It's been a while since I've heard him talk about it, but he'll put sticky notes on his mirror in his bathroom, because every morning he's going to be in the bathroom getting ready for the day, and he'll have promises of God there.
Yep.
And some of that is just replacing untrue thoughts with true thoughts.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, your heart is going to lie to you. You're going to feel a lot of things, but true thoughts are really helpful in those times, and they're grounding for a lot of people. Where I'm made in. So for me, my grounding is the Imago Dei. I'm made in the image of God, and I have inherent dignity, honor, value, and worth. And then Romans 8:28, right? So all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purposes. And that's true when I'm sad, and that's true when I'm anxious. That's true when I feel like a failure, like I failed my wife, my children, myself, my God. Those are things that are true always. And so getting true thoughts that you can remind yourself of throughout the day, things that you can put on your mirror, things that, you can put next to your bedstand when you first wake up in the morning, first go to sleep. Having those true thoughts does wonders to combat depression, anxiety, frustrations, worthlessness, hopelessness, purposelessness. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree 100%. Again, it's staying grounded and anchored into who God actually is and His promises for us as Christians. That's easier for us to do than, say, someone who doesn't know Christ. But even, like you said, what John Piper does it, and that's something like the reminding ourselves of the promises of God. I think of like self-help books, audio books, stuff like that, where people, and you see it on I think of this show, it's a British show called Black Books. And this guy, it's the Book of Calm. He calls it the Book of Calm. I got to study the little Book of Calm. He's all stressed out, and he's like, just be flowing like a gentle bubbling river. And he's like, But it's like these things that help you refocus your mind's point to get to a more calm state of like you were saying, this is who I am. I am this in Christ. It's not about me. I can't lose my faith in Christ because it's not by my works that I've been saved. It's by Christ's works that I am saved. And I again, he's dragging me along to the kingdom, sometimes kicking and screaming. So kind of as we start to land, I mean, we're an hour in, I'm going to start to slowly descend the plane. I won't even land the plane. We're going to start descending the plane a little bit, slowly coming down a little bit. Churches are supposed to be a place where we can gather and we uplift and we worship together and are there for each other. They're supposed to be a place of healing and grace. As we've talked about, we haven't done as a church a really good job at that. But what are some practical ways you think that churches can become safer places for people struggling with mental health?
Yeah, I mean, so this is going to sound a little bit off the wall, but I think better theology would do wonders. And you're going to have a hard time finding that everywhere.
Yeah. But
having a better an understanding of who people are and what struggle means. And I guess what I would recommend to, or I think a lot of churches would do better to pay attention to is like Romans chapter 7.
Yeah.
And if you think about that contextually, you have Paul, who's nearing the end of his life. He's probably it could have been before, it might've been right. Early church history is hard to nail down exactly, but
traditions, we go by traditions basically.
Yeah. Right. And so one of the things that, if you're going to put this positionally, is Paul is on his way to his death,
right? And
he's writing a letter to encompass all that he could possibly communicate, and probably what he did communicate to the early churches. So, like, he went to Corinth, he went to Ephesus, he went to Philippi. He had not gone to Rome. He had not shared the gospel with Rome. So he's putting out there, systematic theology for Rome.
Yep. That was his Wayne Grudem book right there.
There's the Wayne Grudem book of, right. Or Bavinck's, dogmatics, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So it's his book.
Yep.
And in Romans chapter 7, so you're thinking about, Paul is an apostle. He's seen Jesus. He's healed people. Like this is, he wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. Mm-hmm. And you read Romans chapter 7 and find out that Paul struggles with sin, struggles with wrong thoughts, and he wants to do the right thing and he can't do it. And he's failing in ways that he's, open and admitting. And then he's still giving glory to Christ that he's able to continue on the path.
Yep.
And so I think a lot of churches would do really well to not expect sinless perfection out of people, but to expect that people are going to struggle and they're going to go through things that are brutal and difficult. And it would be wise for churches to show a significantly larger amount of grace, not to justify the sins and the failings of people, not to say you're good and right for doing those things, but to love people through them and continually point them to the truth and not cut them off, not write them off, and belittle them. So I think that would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded in what Paul said in Galatians chapter 6, when he's talking specifically about a brother that is in sin, right? And, when he's dealing with a person in sin, he's saying, hey, go to them in gentleness and love to bring them back into the fold, and be careful not to be basically too judgmental so you don't fall into the same sin yourself. Now, that's talking to sin. Now, we're talking about mental struggles, mental health. Yeah. That's not even a sin. How much more grace and love and gentleness should we be showing? We're supposed to show that to a brother lost in sin. We should be showing that more to a brother that is struggling, or a sister that is struggling in whatever's going on in their life. We should be there. So with that in mind, what role do you think that Christian friends or small groups, what kind of role does that play with people that might be struggling with mental health?
Yeah, it's essential. Like it's almost all the studies that you can point to that are, clinically solid studies would say that community is one of the biggest impacts on somebody's mental health and well-being. It can either be extremely detrimental if you're in unhealthy communities, kind of like what we've talked about so far, is when people are judgmental and hurtful and wrong and belittling of people that are, oh, you're anxious, you should just pray it away, depressed, pray it away. Bad relationships, oh, you're struggling with your marriage, well, just pray more, it'll be fine. Right? But you're not getting to the root of the issue there. But it can also be amazing where if God's people can lovingly come alongside people who are struggling and give them, like a guys' night, right? And it doesn't have to be high theology, high Bible. It can be
a hangout
getting together
session
around a bonfire, having some snacks, and even just venting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, dude, it's a lot. I got 3 kids. They're psychopaths like I am. I'm not.
Yeah, I need a s'mores with no judgment.
Yeah, and I might need 2.
Yeah, maybe.
I might need 2.
Maybe
if
throw
I'm
a little
going for my 3rd s'mores, don't judge me, bro.
I might need a Reese's peanut butter cup on top.
Yeah, and we're going to receive that with gladness and joy.
Absolutely.
So I think that community groups, small groups, even just friend groups can be so helpful, can be so beneficial, giving a sense of purpose. So I would even reframe it as if you can have a goal and a sense of purpose and have something you're doing together with your community to affect the greater community out there, that can be so helpful to giving people meaning and value and even validation. And where it doesn't just have to be, oh, we're going to study 1 John this week and we're going to talk about our feelings in 1 John. Right. It can be a bonfire, once a month with the dudes, or a bonfire once a month with the ladies. Yeah, absolutely. It can be a bunko night with the ladies, or poker or whatever else you want to play.
Sure.
It can be being on mission together, going out and witnessing and engaging the community, or feeding the homeless, clothing people, being involved in something can have a tremendous impact.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to look like this touchy-feely whatever. It can just be dudes being dudes, or ladies being ladies, and being on mission together, or building something. It can be really helpful to go. Maybe it's helping put the stairs back together at church, or installing cameras, or
serving at VBS.
Go engage in the chaos, right? Go do VBS, right?
I find that when people serve together, it tightens their bonds, as friends, and it helps you to grow closer and become more vulnerable. In my experience, when you serve together, or like what you're saying, you have the guys' night, or camping trips, those are always best. No agenda. You're sitting around a campfire. You're eating unhealthy food like hot dogs and everything else, but it's a good time, right? No agendas. It's not, deep in theology, like you're saying. It's just being there. It's that fellowship. It's just as important as study.
Yeah. And I would say the best theological conversations I've ever had are at those bonfire nights.
Absolutely.
We have no agenda. And we're talking about our crazy kids, or fights that we've had with people, or how much work sucks, or what, right? We're just getting it out. And then all of a sudden we're talking about, okay, are we going to break down pre-meal, post-meal, all-meal tonight? Are we going to talk about let's get into credo versus pedo baptism. Let's get it.
Yeah, right.
And, those are the best conversations I've ever had, are at the nights where there's no agenda, and dudes can finally just kind of shrug off the stink of the week and engage. And Absolutely. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's some of my favorite times.
Yeah.
So with this in mind, and seeing how important this is, how do you think that the church, should really be partnered also, not just with the community, because there is that place for that. But then sometimes it's a little beyond maybe what I would say the church can handle. Maybe it's bipolarism, schizophrenia, stuff like that. Do you think that the churches should really partner with Christian counselors or mental health professionals? You know, like, to me, my mindset is I would think that maybe we should know of a few good Christian counselors in our area and say, listen, if it's something that as an elder or a pastor, it's a little much for me, I have somebody I can go to. You think that's important for us to establish?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. So I've got a really good Lutheran friend of mine, and he and I had this conversation, almost this exact conversation. And if we were in an ideal world, right, where everybody had infinite amount of time and we could each fulfill our calling or our role perfectly, my heart would be that pastors would be the ones that had all of the mental health training, and they had all of they could spend 40, 50 hours a week engaging the flock and talking to people through this stuff and doing marital counseling and doing child therapy and doing adult therapy, doing all of these things. But realistically, most pastors they're a one-man show. They don't have a lot of support, and they haven't been given, like, it's in the greater, like, non-denominational realm, whether that's, Baptist, non-denominational, some of the more charismatic areas, or, independent Bible churches, they might not even have like an MDiv. They haven't gotten a degree in even Bible. So they're just trying to make it through, and nobody told them that, hey, you might have to counsel people through things that you're ill prepared to counsel.
Absolutely.
And then also, when you go outside, you're going to have to go like wash off garbage and spray paint and whatever else from your church as well.
And you're going to have to shovel the sidewalks and shovel the parking lot in the wintertime and everything else that you got to do. Mow the grass.
So like, pastors are, in my opinion, overworked and underpaid.
Absolutely.
And they're not appreciated to the degree that they should be appreciated.
Yeah.
And I would love to see every church able to have their pastor or pastors. I would rather there be pastors, and that there was not only, a 5-year MDiv that they got, but they also were able to push on for another 2 or 3 years to get like a cake rep accredited mental health degree as well.
Absolutely.
And be able to perform that role appropriately with the time, so they don't feel pressured to, I got to spend 30 hours on my sermon this week, and I've got 50 hours of counseling to do.
Right.
But so that would be my ideal world, is that would be the case. But because of the world that we live in, there is this realm where people have, like I have spent, several years going through really focused studies on how to help people with mental health issues. Yeah. And by God's grace, I have a background in ministry, and I have a background like my undergrad is in philosophy and theology. So I have a robust understanding of not only Christianity, but all the world religions, and wrote one of my thesis papers was on the Vedas for Hinduism.
Nice.
So I thankfully by God's grace, I have that training. But they're absolutely, like, even with all that training, I know that there's people that I don't have the skill set to help as effectively as I wish I could. And then you put that on somebody who's got so many other focuses, so many other issues that they've got going on, and a lack of training. And knowing when to hand something off is not weakness. It's appropriately serving God's body.
It's wisdom.
It's wisdom. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I would love it if all the churches in my area, and all the churches in any area where there was a good, solid Christian counseling firm, could send their people and could know, what are you doing? What are you teaching our people? Yeah. And have a way, because I'll tell you, like, not to belittle it at all, but like there can be a lot of healing in just being a witness and just hearing someone's grief and giving somebody a safe place to talk.
Yep.
That can help a lot. But yeah, if somebody's got bipolar or schizophrenia or really, really, really bad anxiety,
yep.
or maybe they're borderline personality disorder, or they've got PTSD, unfortunately, like there is going to need to be specialized training.
Absolutely.
And there's going to need to be specialized therapeutic approaches. And that's not weakness on the part of the pastor. That's not weakness on the part of the person who's suffering in that, to hand that off to somebody who has that specialized training.
Absolutely.
And God's body, right? Like the body of Christ would do significantly better to not have those burdens on them when they then go do what God's calling them to do.
Yeah.
And be able to like set a lot of those things aside and not have as much conflict, not have as much reactivity, and go then serve, having worked through those things and gotten healthy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, as we are put the landing gear down and as we are getting ready to swoop in here a little, what would you say to Christians that might feel ashamed because they are struggling with mental health right now?
Yeah. I would say, like, I understand. I've walked through it myself. The easy answer is don't be ashamed of that. There's no reason to be ashamed of that. And there are so many people that are here for you, that would love to talk to you and love you and pray with you and worship God with you through this. Again, it's not, you're not broken beyond repair. You still have breath in your lungs, and God still has a purpose for your life. And there's people, his hands and feet are here, desperately wanting to help, desperately wanting to love you through this. I'm one of them, and there are thousands and thousands of others that have that same heart, that really want to walk with you through the things you're going through. And it's in the same way that you should not feel shame for having a bad knee or a bad back or having GERD or whatever else. Like, you should not feel spiritually shamed. You should not feel like less than a Christian for having a physical ailment. If you have a mental ailment and there's something that's causing you distress, there are people that would love and are desperately praying for you to come see them so that they can be the hands and feet of Christ for you.
Absolutely. So, I'm going to give my final thought, and then I'm going to throw it back to you to kind of wrap everything up in a summation of what if I've missed anything or anything else that you want to add or say. So, but I really do appreciate you being on with us today, Andrew. I think this is such an important conversation that we need to have as a church, and these things we talked about, I hope that it has helped a lot of people. And I hope people realize mental health struggles doesn't mean someone's faith is weak. The Bible shows us that even some of God's most faithful servants experience deep emotions and distress. The church should be a place where we can bring people that have struggles into the light to help them find truth, support, and hope in Christ. And we should always surround them with grace and love. And I think that the more we do that as a church, the better. I think the more the church is going to grow, the better off we're all going to be, because people aren't going to hide their emotions. It's not going to be this very stale relationship. We're going to grow in our relationships, and out of that outpouring, people are going to start seeing us and knowing us by our love. And people are going to say, hey, I want that. I want what's going on there. So as we land the plane, Andrew, is there anything else that you would like to add, or anything I didn't ask you, or something that you wanted to cover before we end the show?
Yeah, I think we've handled a lot of it. And I hope that people know, and maybe some people that are listening would feel comfortable now reaching out and asking for help. Asking for help's not weakness. It's just recognizing that you need something, and that God's people are ready, willing, desperately praying for you to come see them and get the community and help that you need to thrive, So yeah, if anybody's listening and would like to see a counselor, there are so many of us that would love to see you and love to walk with you through the things that you're going through. And that'd be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put in our show notes, there's a website called, I believe it's Psychology Today. And if you go to that website, and Andrew, you're probably familiar with this, you can actually go and you can type in Christian counselor into the search bar, and it'll pull up, and then your area, and it'll pull up every Christian counselor, and kind of, you can pull up all their websites and look at stuff. So if you are struggling, if you're ready to make that first step into what I would call a journey to not just self-discovery, but self-healing, that healing point. If you're ready for that, go to our show notes, go to that link, and search for somebody in your area. Maybe talk to your pastor. Maybe they do know somebody. If you don't have a pastor, if you're not plugged into a local body because you're a traveling worker, Andrew used to be a lineman. I'm sure you traveled some. I know I have other people that I know that do a lot of traveling. They're not in one local place all the time. You can do the virtual stuff, and Psychology Today will give you those links to those websites, to those people. But, seek that out, seek out that healing. I would encourage everybody in the church to be ready to welcome people that may come to you with open arms, and be there to listen and to walk with them. So with that, let's dive into some fun facts with Fuller.
Time for Fun Facts with Fuller.
If that doesn't heal the soul, I don't know what does. I love my babies. All right, Andrew. So the fun fact of the day today is, did you know that there are two main shapes of popcorn? There's butterfly and there's mushroom. Mushroom is when a kernel pops and it's a uniformed like mushroom top, and a butterfly is when it like an explosion. So like popcorn, like at the movie theater. It's two different types. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea, but with how much popcorn I eat, I should know that.
I didn't know either, but now we both know. Andrew, again, I thank you so much for being on with us today. Also, in case anybody doesn't know, Andrew just finished writing a new book called Proverbs, The Mind and the Heart. It is on Amazon. Go get your copy today. I know we didn't get a whole lot of chance to talk about that, Andrew, but I want people to go check it out. I just ordered mine this evening. I'm going to get it Monday, and I'm looking forward to reading that. But Andrew, thank you so much. I'm going to put you back in the green room, and then I'll get back with you in just a second. All right?
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And thank you guys for joining us today here on RealTalk Christian Podcast. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can reach out to us at realtalkchristianpodcast@gmail.com. If you haven't joined our community page yet, head over to Facebook, RealTalk Christian Podcast Community, and join today, where the conversations continue to be had day in and day out. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, head over to YouTube, RealTalk Christian Podcast, hit that bell and that subscribe. That way, when we're on, you know that we're there. I love you guys all very much. If you guys need anything from me, reach out to me. You can reach out to me via text 574-400-5352, and I will try to assist you any way I can. Just love you all very, very much. I hope that this was as encouraging to you as it is to me. But until the next time, you guys take it easy.